Hi.
But yeah, so good
Uh, so my name is Aparna, and today I'm going to be talking about Fruitchain, which is another alternative consensus protocol to the existing proof of work. So currently, like, n- like Satoshi's Bitcoin protocol uses something called a proof of work, where like players have to confirm or record their transactions by solving like a computationally hard mathematical puzzle. Um, and this puzzle is like based is a function of all the previous transactions. Um, every user has a block on his own machine and keeps track of like like all the transactions, and each block consists of three of three important things. One is like a hash to the previous nonce, a nonce, and then the final like message or record. Um, with with Satoshi's protocol, it there's like one underlying assumption that majority of the participants in the network are going to be honest. And that is like a huge assumption to make. What if like most of them are not dishonest players, right? Um, like yeah. Um, one, if like most of the people are dishonest, um, like okay, um, like most of the fees is like split up. Sorry, give me a little bit. Um, and oh, there are two parts. There are two false assumptions that are made. The first is that majority of the players are going to be honest, and the second is they're going to know how to execute the protocol right on their individual machines. But like, if these don't happen, then um, then it gets like, how do you ensure there's still like consensus reached? That's where Fruitchain comes in. Like an ideal protocol would not be relying on majority of the network to be honest. It'll require that um, a, a coalition or a controlling group of people will only have as much of power um, or get as much of money um, proportional to the work they do. Like if a team of them collaborate, they shouldn't be unfairly getting more of the rewards than they would if they were individually working on um, mining or like yeah. Um, okay, so here it gets a little bit mathematical, and I'm gonna try like write it out. It, if like the probability of um, adversaries in a network is p, you would expect the total number of transactions to be t. Um, but what the adversaries are trying to do is replace all the blocks mined by the honest miners with their own individual blocks. So they're not generating any new transactions. Like they're just working on replacing the existing ones. So the total number of transactions, instead of being t anymore, becomes um, like 1 minus p times t, because 1 minus p is the number of honest players in the network, and the number of blocks they're generating is all getting replaced by the adversaries. So the fraction of like control the adversaries have in the network is p over 1 minus p. And if the adversary has like half of the network power, then they have complete control over the network. Because if p is half, this becomes like 1. And that will allow the adversaries to get twice their fair share of rewards when they should be only getting something proportional to the amount of work they do. So ideally, you want a blockchain that is dependent on only rewarding the players proportional to the amount of work they do. And this is an open question. It's not being solved. Fruitchain tries to come close to it by creating something called like a P coalition and like binding it above so that the rewards remain somewhat proportional, even if a group of adversaries collaborate. Yeah. Fruitchain it's not quite optimal. It's just closer to optimal than the existing protocols that we have. Yeah, a blockchain is in Fruitchain is basically a delta approximate fair protocol with respect to the attackers. So they are getting only as much of rewards as the amount of work they're putting in. And in Fruitchain, the delta is set at 0.3. So it's called like a 3 delta fair protocol. Fruitchain is also like maintains a whole consistency and liveliness as proof of work, and it adds in this delta approximate component to it. This is the P coalition safe thing I was talking about, where, as you can see, it's like bound above by 3 delta because Fruitchain uses like a delta of 0.3. Like, there's a lot more mathematical depth in the paper, so I've not covered it very much here. Yeah, this is essentially just saying, like, if there's a coalition of certain number of adversaries, they shouldn't be able to get more than, like, 1 times 1 plus E. And E is like epsilon's like a very small number. Like, in the case of a regular, in the Satoshi's protocol, the miners could get up to 2 times the number of rewards if they had half the number, if they were half the proportion of the network. But here, even if they control half the network, they shouldn't be able to get twice the number of rewards. They should only be getting like 1.3 times the number of rewards. Yeah, so this is a quick overview of the protocol. Instead of, it's essentially the same thing as blockchain, except the records are not stored in blocks. They're stored in something called fruits. So you have 2 components. One is a block, which has your traditional hash to the previous function, hash to the current, and then a transaction, and something called a fruit. And the fruit is where all the details of your message are stored. And so every time that a miner tries to like do a proof of work, there are 2 types of proofs of work. One is for the blocks, and another is for the fruits specifically. So you can adjust the whole difficulty of the network by having like, you can have the proof of works for the blocks be easier, so it can be quicker than 10 minutes. And the proof of work for the fruits could be the same difficulty as what it is in the current blockchain.
Hold on.
Yeah.
So we made two computations, one for block and another for fruit.
Yeah.
But we have to write fruit with block together.
So what?
They're not separate, aren't they?
So you are mining separately for the fruit, and you're mining separately for the block. The blocks get chained together in what still is a blockchain, and you also have another list of fruits, like a set of fruits, which you store the fruits once they get mined, or once they've been validated. Once they've been validated, yeah.
So is there a fruit chain? Or the
There's a fruit chain and there's a blockchain.
So
The fruits are inside the blocks.
Wait.
Does each fruit have a link to the previous fruit?
So okay, I haven't explained that yet.
Okay.
So each block contains a fruit, and a fruit has to point to a previous block. But a block that's been within the previous 17 of what has already been published. Does that make sense?
So the fruit doesn't always point to the last block.
No, the fruit is only pointing to one of the previous 17 published blocks.
What's inside the fruit?
The actual verification or the record of your message. So you're not actually verifying your record, and you're not storing the record in the transaction record in your block. You're just storing the fruit in place of that.
Why?
Well, I'll explain. Yeah.
Is there concern with if there is some significant, maybe not significant, but a measurable portion of the network has conflicting transactions?
Oh.
That you might find a fruit. You might find fruits and have fruits that have a fruit get included that conflicts with your fruit before it can be included.
So that's the thing.
Fruit causes, yeah.
So if okay, can I answer your question first? So if there are multiple fruits verified at the same time, the one that points to the earliest block is going to be the one that's accepted in the network. So even if you have a bunch of fruits that have been verified, it's ordered by which one points first. So in that sense, even if an adversary tried to do a forking attack later on, if this fruit was already verified, the new fruit they verify is going to be pointing to a block much later down in the line. So it won't be accepted by the network. Does that? Yeah. Yeah.
Does every block have a fruit?
Yes, every block has a fruit. So a block contains the same things that it does in the Satoshi's protocol, except it also contains a fruit instead of a transaction or record.
Okay, follow-up question.
Yeah.
If you're mining a block, do you also have to submit your fruit at the same time then?
So
Or
once
do
you
mine separately?
Okay, so once you mine a block, a fruit gets generated and added to the stack of recent fruits? Yeah, it's added to a stack of recent fruits which have not yet been verified. And miners verifying fruits are going to be popping off the stack of recent fruits and verifying them after they verify the blocks. Yeah.
Okay, but the thing that you're verifying, how do you verify that a block is legit if you don't have a transaction log?
The same way that you comparing the hash of the existing block with the hash that you get.
And then you stick the fruit in it later.
What?
Then you put the fruit in it later.
So the fruit, it doesn't matter, right? What the fruit is, because that does not count into your hash code at all. Yeah, it's the same existing hash code. You're just adding in another component called the fruit. Yeah. Wait, did you have a question?
In the first block, in the whole chain, what do?
Oh, the Genesis block?
The Genesis block, yeah.
That's like
Is that
initialized.
Like a Genesis fruit?
So once the first block gets verified, there's like a Genesis fruit created as well, which is added to the recent fruits category, which still has to be verified. Yeah. Okay.
Is it possible that, like, there are blocks, there are fruits in those blocks, and one block points to the previous block, but the fruit which is in that block points to a fruit which is not in this previous block, but in any block within previous 17 blocks.
Okay, so I didn't probably explain that well.
Did I correctly understand?
Okay, so you have these blocks. This is a block. And a fruit is a component of the block. The block has a previous block pointer.
Can you move it a little bit to the left?
Oh, yeah. Do we have an eraser? Okay, never mind. I'll just... So this is a block, and it contains your fruit. Your fruit contains the record of your transaction or your message or whatever you're storing. Your block has a previous block pointer, so a bunch of blocks are chained together. The only thing this fruit does is it also contains a block pointer, which points to like maybe one randomly generated block within the previous 17 blocks. So this will point to maybe that.
Why do we need it?
So that is because if two fruits, so you know when I was talking about how a forking attack happens, if in such an attack, usually the adversary tries to like replace the existing verified, the existing branch with another branch, right? But right now you're gonna have like this pointing to the, like this is sort of like a timekeeping mechanism, and since this was verified first, the network will only accept the fruit that was verified first. So even if an adversary at a later point of time tries to create a branch, like the fruit that he verifies is going to be pointing to a block that was verified much later.
So that means you have to spend more effort in order to create an alternative fork. So you have to take into account those blocks to which fruits point to.
Mm-hmm.
So if like we have 100 blocks
mm-hmm.
and we want to create fork from 96 block,
mm-hmm.
so we want to delete 5 blocks, the latest 5 blocks. So we have 100 blocks, we want to leave block from 95 to 100 and put ours, fraudulent blocks.
Mm-hmm.
We have to look at what block fruit which is in block 95 is
mm-hmm.
going to and start from that block.
Yeah.
If it points like
it cannot
there
point.
There is range of 17 blocks, which means we subtract
like a max of
17 95 and we have to start from that block. It's like 78.
Yeah, something.
From,
yeah.
From the 78th block, which is much more energy and resource consuming. So
mm-hmm.
it's
so it won't even be accepted, right?
Yeah.
If like something you created in block number 4, your fruit would point to maybe block 1 or 2, and if this is pointing to block 78, the same fruit is not going to be accepted. The new fruit won't be accepted because
there is fruit in block 78, which points to something else.
yeah.
All code. Yeah.
Okay.
Interesting.
Yeah. So the fruits themselves also require this proof of work. And because these blocks have a separate, like a different proof of work for them, which is P, and the fruits have a different proof of work for them, like you can ensure that miners will be able to there's no longer a high variance in the network for validating a transaction. Like you could have the blocks verified very quickly, but still keep the verification process for the fruits like the same level of difficulty. So you're still making money. Yeah. Fruits point to an earlier block in the blockchain. It's right now bounded by 17. I'm not sure what the reasoning for that is. The recency parameter is what keeps track of which fruit was generated from which block and when, and where it's pointing, what block it's allowed to point to. Another property is there's something called an expiry time, which is put on fruits. Yeah. Also, the length of the hash string is 2 times the existing length. So the first part keeps track of whether you verified a block, and the second part keeps track of whether you verified a fruit. Yeah. So this is without going into too much detail, a overview of how it runs. There's your genesis block, and your fruit is initially there's no fruit created. Once your genesis block has been verified, then the fruit gets added to the most recent fruit that's generated. Anytime you validate a fruit, you add it to the chain of fruits. This is pretty much the same thing of what's happening in a regular blockchain. If your current chain is longer than your existing chain, you accept the current chain as your main chain. Another thing with Fruitchain is block. Yeah. I already talked about it. How fruits are the ones conforming your transactions, and blocks are only conforming your fruits. I'm going to talk about ordering now. If fruits have been produced at 2 separate times, you're going to be taking the one that points to the earlier block. And if it so happens that 2 fruits are pointing at the same block, then you're going to go in lexicographical order and accept the fruits. So applications of this. One is something called hybrid consensus and committee election in the permissionless setting, where basically a group of honest miners are elected to ensure that the protocol is being executed the right way. In a usual setting, you would need 3/4 of the people of the committee to be honest miners, but because the Fruitchain allows for a block and a fruit, you only need 2/3 of those people from 3/4 to be honest miners. So it reduces the number of the amount of dependency you have on honest miners. The second thing is preventing mining pools. initially it might not make sense. Like mining pools sounds like a great idea for miners to collaborate. But with collaboration comes like power to a single group of people. And if enough miners collaborate, then they could launch a network attack, which is beneficial for them. The whole point is to not have that happen. And which is why if you have like which is why if a mining attack happens, like if people come together to form a mining pool, then the whole point of the decentralized system is lost. Like it's essentially centralized and controlled by one group of people, right?
I kind of agree, but in practice, how do you prevent? Like I kind of agree that mining pools are just like kind of against the whole decentralized idea of blockchains. But how do you like have sufficiently regular payments to like small scale miners for it to be feasible to be a small scale miner for a Fruitchain network?
Yeah.
Because like Bitcoin, you just can't you can't not be part of a mining pool unless you're running like tons of ASICs.
Yes. Which is exactly why you have two proofs of work. One is for the block and one is for the fruit. So if you had the one for the block be not that hard and like quickly verifiable, then there's no longer a high variance. And then miners are regularly generating, like verifying transactions and making money. But at the same time, you don't want to like lose the whole security of it, which is why you keep the longer transaction time for the verification of fruits.
Okay, so you have far more frequent blocks.
You can adjust it to have blocks which are very frequent. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Does latency become an issue when you have blocks that are that frequent?
Yes, and it's not really being addressed. They did mention latency is an issue, but yeah. And that's all I was gonna talk about today. Yeah.